looked at the emergency alert on his screen. The message was simple but urgent. A medical ship was coming to station and they needed human help. Had worked as a veterinarian for 15 years before joining the space program. He knew animals. He knew how to treat creatures that could not talk about their pain. Now he was about to meet aliens who could talk, but they did not want human hands touching them. He walked down the corridor toward the docking bay. The station was busy with activity. People moved fast. Alarms beeped. Everyone knew something important was happening. Had been the station veterinarian for 3 years. Before this, no one paid much attention to him. Now they needed him. Now they wanted answers about creatures that came from stars. They looked nothing like humans. They were made of clear crystal that glowed from inside. Light moved through their bodies like water. Had studied their biology on the data screens many times, but seeing them in person was different. The 3 beings that entered the station moved with careful steps. One of them was damaged. The light inside him flickered. The rhythm was wrong. Even who had spent most of his life with animals could see that something was broken. Laura met in the observation room. She was the station's chief biologist, and she knew more about alien species than anyone else here. She handed him a data pad. Her face looked worried. "They sent a message," Laura said. "The sick one is their chief medical officer. His name is, the other 2 are his assistants. The leader is called Vexil. He is very clear about one thing. He does not want human doctors near." Read the message on the pad. The words were direct and cold. "Your hands are too crude. Our people are made of crystal. Human touch will destroy us. We will accept chemicals and information, nothing more." Knew this would be hard. He had worked with animals that did not trust humans. They would fight. They would panic. But the difference was that animals did not make decisions about their own care. Vexil was making that choice and it was a choice based on fear. Entered the medical bay where was resting. The crystalline being lay on a special platform that they had brought with them. Vexil stood beside him, his bright form blocking most of the light. The other 2 assistants stayed in the corner, their lights dim with worry. "We appreciate your station," Vexil said. His voice was hard like glass. "But needs no human assistance. We have treatment protocols that work for our kind. Your methods are primitive." Did not argue. He had learned that arguing never worked. Instead, he moved to the diagnostic equipment and began to scan from a distance. The readings appeared on the screen and felt his stomach sink. This was not what Vexil had described. This was not simple crystal damage that could be fixed with standard repairs. "Can you tell me what happened?" asked, keeping his voice calm and low. "When did the flickering start? What did he do before he got sick?" Vexil hesitated, then he answered. 2 weeks ago, was working in our medical lab. He touched something that was not properly labeled. Now the light inside him breaks. The pattern is wrong. Our healers have tried everything. Nothing works." Looked at the data. He saw what they had missed. Was not suffering from crystal fatigue or structural damage. Something biological had attacked him. Microbes, tiny living things that had found their way into the spaces between his crystals. The treatments were designed to repair broken structures, not to kill living organisms. "I think has an infection," said carefully. "Something living inside his body, not a break, not damage, an infection." Vexil's lights turned red. He moved forward, his crystal edges sharp and dangerous. "That is impossible. We do not get infections. We are not made of soft flesh. We are crystal." "But something is damaging him," said. "Look at the pattern. It is spreading. It is growing. That is what infections do." "You are wrong," Vexil said. His lights pulsed with anger. "We will manage this ourselves. We have managed everything ourselves for 10,000 years. We do not need human hands on bodies." Stepped back, he understood. This was not just about health. This was about pride. This was about a species that had lived alone for so long that the idea of needing help from another race felt like death itself. Over the next hours, watched from the observation room, Vexil and his assistants worked on using their own methods. They tried chemicals that had worked for others. They tried energy treatments. They tried rest and careful handling. Nothing helped. His light grew dimmer. The cracks in his crystal structure spread like frost on a window. By evening's condition was worse, much worse. The flickering had become violent. His light came in and out like a failing star. The 2 assistants had moved close to him, their lights touching his, trying to transfer energy or comfort, but it was not working. Sat in his small office. He could not sleep. He thought about his years as a veterinarian on Earth. He had treated dogs that had been beaten. He had treated horses with infections. He had treated birds with broken wings. All of them had been afraid. All of them had been in pain, but they had trusted him because he had shown them that his hands, though they looked big and dangerous, were only there to help. He thought about Vexil standing beside, the way the lights had become dim and worried, the way his geometric form had softened slightly when he thought no one was watching. Vexil was scared. Vexil was watching his friend die, and he did not know how to stop it. Made a choice. He would try one more time. He would try tomorrow morning, and he would do it differently. He would not argue about medicine or biology or what was possible and impossible. He would appeal to something deeper. He would appeal to the thing that made all beings the same, no matter what they looked like or what they were made of. He would appeal to the love that Vexil clearly felt for. Morning came gray and cold. Checked readings before he went to the medical bay. The crystalline being was fatting fast. Within hours, probably less, would be gone. There was almost no time left. Walked into the bay where Vexil stood guard over his friend. There was alone now. The assistants had gone to rest or to pray or whatever did when they faced loss. Vexil's lights were barely visible. His geometric form was small and tight and broken-looking. Stood still, he did not approach. He did not speak right away. He just stood there and let Vexil see him. "I am sorry," said finally. "I am sorry I cannot help. I am sorry your people refused to let me try." Vexil's lights flickered. When he spoke, his voice was different, not hard anymore, just sad. "There is nothing you can do," Vexil said. "You are human, we are, what you know does not matter here." But Vexil was wrong, and knew it was time to show him. "I was a doctor for animals before I was a doctor for people," said. "Animals that could not speak, animals that did not understand I was trying to help them. I learned to be gentle with them. I learned that the hands that looked scary could heal. I learned that sometimes, when everything else fails, you have to believe that another being knows something you do not." Moved slowly into the medical bay. Each step was careful and measured. He wanted Vexil to see that he was not a threat. His hands were open and empty. His face was calm. He had done this before with animals. He had approached wounded creatures that might bite or scratch or kick. He had learned that speed and confidence meant nothing. What mattered was showing that you meant no harm. His form was still on the platform. The crystalline structure that had once glowed with bright light was now dim and dark. Large cracks ran through his body like broken glass. These cracks were spreading visibly, could see them grow even as he watched. The infection inside was consuming him from within. Without treatment would be dead within the hour, maybe less. "His name," said looking at, "what is it short for?" Vexil looked confused by the question. His lights flickered with uncertainty. "Short for." "On my world," said, "we have long names and short names must be short for something longer, something with meaning." There was quiet for a moment, then his lights shifted to a softer blue. "It means the one who learns fast, the one who asks questions when others do not." Smiled, "That is a good name. That is a name for someone important." Vexil's lights dimmed further. When he spoke, his voice was quiet. "He is important. He was my student, then he became my friend. Before that, there was no friend. There was only work, only knowledge, only duty." The paused. "Showed me that there was more, that a mind could be shared with another. That work was better when someone else cared about it, too." "Then let me help him," said. "Let me use what I know. I have spent my whole life learning about bodies that are not human, about systems that work differently, about ways to fix what is broken when the usual methods do not work." Vexil did not answer. Instead, he moved to the side of his platform. His crystalline hand hovered over the sick being's body. The gesture was tender and careful. It was the gesture of someone who had touched this same being many times before and now feared that this might be the last time. "If you fail," Vexil said, his voice carrying something that sounded like resignation, "if you make him worse, there will be consequences." Heard the threat beneath the words. He heard the desperation, too. Vexil was surrendering, not out of trust, out of the simple fact that was dying and there was no other option left. "I understand," said. He walked to the equipment cabinet and pulled out the diagnostic scanner. He began to scan his entire body, taking readings from different angles. The data filled the screen and studied it carefully. He had reviewed this information before, but this time he was not looking at theory. This time a life depended on him understanding exactly what was happening inside's crystalline form. The infection was clear now that he knew how to look for it. Tiny biological organisms had invaded his body. They were nested between the crystals, spreading through spaces that biology did not even have names for. The organisms were feeding on its energy and structure. They were multiplying. They were consuming him from inside out. Had studied physiology. He knew that their biology was based on crystal lattices and energy flows, but he also knew something that many advanced species forgot. All biology, no matter what it looked like or where it came from, shared basic rules. Life needed energy. Life needed to reproduce. Life could be harmed by things that interrupted these basic processes. He accessed the station's medical database and searched for antibiotic compounds that had been effective against microscopic organisms in inorganic environments. Most of them were too strong. They would destroy crystal structure, but one stood out. A compound designed to target the cell membranes of microorganisms without harming surrounding materials. It was used in some cleaning applications on the station, but in smaller doses, administered carefully, it should work. Prepared the compound, he mixed it to half strength first. Then he drew it up into an injector. His hands were steady even though his heart was beating fast. This was the moment where everything changed. Either he was about to save a life or he was about to destroy one. "This will sting," he said, speaking to even though was barely conscious. "But it will also help, I promise you that." He found the injection point on crystalline form, the area where the cracks were thinnest and most accessible. He could feel Vexil watching every movement. He could feel the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. A being's life was in his hands now. A being from another world with a biology that no human had ever tried to treat before. Push the injector forward, the compound entered its body. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the crystalline being's lights flared, his form convulsed. The cracks in his body seemed to spread wider and darker, felt a spike of panic. Had he done it wrong? Had he killed instead of saving him? Vexil moved toward the platform, his lights turning red with what might have been anger or fear or both. "Wait," said, holding up a hand. "Look at the readings." He pointed at the screen. The biological organisms were dying. The compound was working exactly as it hoped. The microscopic creatures that had invaded its body were being destroyed. Their cell membranes were breaking down. They could not reproduce. They could not survive. The convulsion passed. His form went still. His light stopped flickering. For several long seconds, nothing changed at all. Then slowly, a pale glow began to emerge from deep inside its crystalline structure. The glow was weak at first. Then it grew stronger. The cracks in his body stopped spreading. The darkness began to lighten. The rhythm of his light became steady and regular. Was stable. Watch the readings on the screen. The infection was being metabolized and expelled. Its own immune system, now supported by the antibiotic compound, was winning. It was slow, but it was working. It was actually working. Hours passed, did not leave the medical bay. He monitored constantly. He checked the readings every few minutes. Vexil remained at side, his lights shifting through different colors as the processed what was happening. By the end of the first day, his light was bright and steady. The cracks in his body had stopped spreading and begun to repair themselves. The infection was gone. Was going to live. 3 days later was sitting up on his platform. His crystalline form glowed with clear, steady light. The cracks that had threatened to destroy him were now smooth lines of pale color running through his transparent body. These lines looked like scars. They looked like proof that he had survived something that should have killed him. Checked the final readings and made notes in his report. The infection was completely gone. His immune system was strong. His energy levels were normal. There was no reason to keep him confined to the medical bay any longer. "You are well enough to move around the station," said. "But I want to see you again in 1 week. We need to make sure the infection does not return." His lights brightened. He stood on his crystal legs, testing his balance. Each movement was careful, but they were strong movements. Movements of a being that had come back from the edge of death. "I owe you a debt," said. His voice was different now too, less formal, more alive. "My people do not forget such things. A life saved is a bond made. You have bonded with me." "I did what any doctor would do," said. "No," corrected. "Any doctor would not have done this. Any doctor would not have risked his reputation on a species he did not fully understand. Any doctor would not have believed that a veterinarian could know more than a medical expert." His lights pulsed in patterns that was starting to recognize. This was thinking. This was processing something important. "You did this because you saw me dying and you could not accept that. This is something special." Vexil entered the medical bay. The leader had barely left side for the past 3 days. Now his lights were bright and gold, a color that had learned meant approval and satisfaction. The other ship crews have sent messages, Vexel said. He approached with a gesture that resembled something like a bow. They wish to know if your people can treat them as well. They wish to know if you will accept patients from other worlds. Had not expected this. He had expected them to take and leave, to return to their own space and forget about the human who had treated them against their wishes. What kind of patients? Asked. All kinds, Vexel said. With damaged neural systems, with metabolic disorders, with regeneration problems. Beings from 20 different species with conditions that our own medical experts cannot fix. Laura appeared in the doorway. She had been monitoring the situation from the observation room. Now she walked into the bay with a look on her face that suggested she had heard every word. We would need approval from the station commander, Laura said, looking at. And we would need to set up a proper system for handling alien patients. Medical protocols, safety measures, documentation. I can help with that, Vexel said. His voice carried the weight of authority. I am senior liaison for all interactions with human stations. I can coordinate with your command. I can help establish the protocols you need. What had started as a simple emergency medical case was becoming something much larger. Could see it happening. He could see the future spreading out from this moment like branches on a tree. The human medical team was about to become something new. They were about to become experts in alien biology and alien treatment. That night sat in the station's common area with a cup of coffee. Laura found him there and sat down across from him. She had a data pad in her hands and a tired smile on her face. The commander approved it, she said. We are officially establishing a medical division. You are the head of it. Raised his eyebrows. I was a veterinarian, Nada. Exactly, Laura said. That is why they picked you. You know how to treat creatures that cannot explain their symptoms. You know how to adapt your methods to different biology. You know how to be patient with beings that do not understand your intentions. She leaned back in her chair. Also, they specifically requested you. They said they would only send patients if you were the one overseeing the program. Did not know what to say. A week ago, he had been a minor member of the station staff. No one paid much attention to him. The important work was being done by the diplomats and the engineers. Now he was being asked to lead something completely new, something that had never existed before. The next morning, stood in the medical bay with his new team. 3 human doctors had been assigned to work with him. Sarah Williams was an expert in human cardiology, but she was eager to learn alien physiology. David Johnson was a biologist with experience in genetic research, and Emma Park was a trauma surgeon who had volunteered specifically to work on alien cases. We have 6 patients coming in tomorrow, told them. 3 with neural damage, 2 with metabolic issues, and 1 with a regeneration problem. He paused, looking at each of them. None of us have treated these species before. We are going to have to learn as we go, and we are going to have to be very careful about making mistakes. How do we even start? Emma asked. We do not know their biology well enough to know what is normal and what is sick. We ask, said simply. We listen, we watch, we make observations, and we use what we know about medicine in general to guide us. He pulled up images of the different species on the screen. All biology follows certain rules. All life needs energy. All life needs to remove waste. All life can be damaged. All life can heal. We start with these universal principles and work from there. Appeared at the door of the medical bay, that was now fully healed. His light was brilliant and clear. In his crystalline hand, he held a data pad. I have brought medical information about my people, said. He approached with a sense of purpose. I have also brought information about the. These beings have asked me to explain their biology to your team. They trust me to help you understand them. Thank you, said. He took the data pad from his hand. The gesture was simple, but it meant something. Was offering his knowledge. Was choosing to work with humans instead of against them. We will have many meetings, continued. You will ask many questions. Some will be difficult questions. Some will make my people uncomfortable, but this is necessary if we are to work together. The slights pulsed steadily. I hated you 3 days ago. I thought your hands were crude and dangerous. I was wrong. I am here now to help you be less wrong about other things. Sarah, David, and Emma exchanged looks of cautious excitement. This was going to be challenging. This was going to be difficult. But it was also going to be something that no human medical team had ever done before. As the sun set outside the station's observation windows, stood watching the stars. Tomorrow they would begin treating alien patients. Tomorrow they would make mistakes and learn from those mistakes. Tomorrow, they would start to bridge something that had seemed impossible to bridge just days before. The first patient came in on a gray morning. Her name was, and she had been suffering from neural degeneration for 3 years. They had tried their own methods, but nothing had worked. Now the connections in her mind were breaking down. Soon she would not be able to think at all. Examined her carefully. The brain was not like a human brain. It was more like a web of electrical connections spread throughout her entire body. The problem was clear once he looked at the data. The connections were corroding. Oxidation was eating away at the pathways that allowed thoughts to flow. "Why has this not been treated?" Emma asked, studying the scans. "The thought it was aging," explained. He was present for every appointment now, acting as both translator and cultural advisor. They believed that once the degeneration started, nothing could stop it. It was simply the end of life. Saw the solution immediately. The corrosion was happening because of exposure to radiation from its own species' ships. They had evolved to work in high-radiation environments, but their neural systems needed protection, a protective coating, something that could be applied to the electrical connections. He designed a treatment using a biocompatible polymer. He carefully applied it to the neural pathways in its body. The procedure took 6 hours. By the end, his hands were shaking with exhaustion, but its lights, the glowed with bioluminescence much like were brighter than they had been in years. Within a week, could think clearly again. Her mind was sharp, her energy was restored, she had her life back. The second patient recovered just as well. Then they arrived. They were different from any species had treated before. They were carbon-based, but their biology was radically different from humans. Their bodies were more like living crystals that could shape themselves. The problem was that they had lost the ability to do this. Their forms had become fixed, rigid, unable to adapt. "This is a genetic problem," David said, studying the data. "Something in their DNA has locked up. They cannot change anymore." Looked at the scans for hours. He studied everything he could find about biology. Then he had an idea. What if the problem was not the genes themselves, but the triggering mechanism? What if their bodies needed a signal that would unlock the genetic code? He developed a treatment that used carefully calibrated electromagnetic pulses. The pulses would signal the bodies to open their genetic locks, to allow change and adaptation again. The first patient lay on the treatment table, activated the device. Electromagnetic energy flowed through the alien's body in precise waves. They trembled. Then slowly his form began to change. He became more fluid, more alive. His color shifted through a dozen different hues as his body learned to adapt again. The transformation was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. It was life returning to something that had been locked in stone. When the treatment ended, they stood up. He moved his arms. They bent and twisted in ways that had not been possible before. He looked at with eyes that now glowed with gratitude and wonder. "I can move," they said. His voice was like wind through a canyon. "I can feel my body again. I can be myself again." News of the treatment spread through the alien community around the station. More beings came. A with regeneration damage. 2 with neural problems. A being from a species had never heard of with a condition that even the aliens' own doctors could not understand. And treated them all. He did not always succeed. One patient died despite his best efforts. A whose physiology was so complex that no amount of study could reveal what was wrong. That death haunted for weeks. It reminded him that medicine was not magic. Sometimes, no matter how hard you tried, no matter how much you cared, some beings could not be saved. But most did survive. Most did recover. And word spread that the human veterinarian had something that alien medical experts did not. He had the willingness to look at biology from first principles. He had the patience to work with species he did not fully understand. He had the compassion to see each patient as an individual worthy of his full attention. 1 month after his recovery, the station held a ceremony. Beings from 15 different species gathered in the main hall. They came to honor the work that and his team had done. Vexil stood on a raised platform. His lights burned bright as he spoke. "When was dying, I believed that only knowledge could save him," Vexil said. His voice echoed through the chamber. "I was wrong. I believed that other species had nothing to teach us. I was wrong. I believed that contact with aliens was a weakness, not a strength. I was wrong." He gestured toward. "This human showed us that wisdom comes in many forms. It comes from experience with creatures unlike ourselves. It comes from the willingness to try when the answer is not obvious. It comes from caring about a being you have never met before. Vexil's lights pulsed slowly. The humans have a tradition of honoring those who serve others. We have adopted this tradition. Will you accept this honor? Walked forward. In his hands, Vexil placed a crystalline object. It was small and perfect, and it glowed with internal light. It was beautiful beyond words. This is a unity stone, said, appearing beside him. It connects two beings. It marks a bond that cannot be broken, only given when one being saves another, only given when trust is earned through sacrifice and compassion. Held the stone. It was warm. It vibrated slightly in his palm as if it contained a heartbeat, a life, a connection across the stars between species that were supposed to be unable to work together. That night sat alone in his quarters. He held the Unity Stone and thought about the journey that had brought him here. From a small animal veterinarian on Earth to a leader of a medical program on a space station. From treating dogs and horses and birds to treating beings made of crystal and electricity and living plastics. Laura knocked on his door. She had a bottle of human wine and 2 glasses. "Congratulations," she said, sitting down beside him. "You have changed everything." "I just treated one patient," said. "I just tried to help someone who was dying." 6 months later, the Integrated Medical Symposium was being held on station. Physicians and healers from 23 different species arrived for the conference. They came to share knowledge. They came to learn new treatment methods. They came to see the human veterinarian who had changed the way medicine was understood across the galaxy. Stood in the observation deck, watching ships arrive in the docking bay. Each new arrival meant new faces, new species, new opportunities to learn and to share what his team had discovered. Found him there, his crystalline form glowing softly in the starlight, filtering through the transparent walls. "You seem worried," said. The had become much more than a patient too. He had become a friend and a partner in the medical work. "You should be proud. Today, your methods will be taught to medical experts from across the known galaxy." "I am worried that I will disappoint them," said honestly. "I am worried that what worked here will not work everywhere, that my methods are specific to one station and one group of species." "That is not true," said. His lights pulsed in the pattern that now recognized as gentle disagreement. "What you have done here is teach others to think differently about medicine. You have shown that knowledge comes from careful observation, that compassion makes you a better healer, that the willingness to work with beings you do not understand is a strength, not a weakness." The main conference hall was filled with beings of every shape and size. Some were crystalline some were made of energy constrained in biological form, some were solid and hard like beetles, some were soft and flowing like jellyfish. They were a rainbow of life from across the stars. Vexil stood at the podium and introduced the symposium. His speech was long and formal, but it carried weight and meaning. He told the story of illness. He told the story of a human veterinarian who had refused to accept that something could not be done. He told the story of how one act of compassion had opened doors that had been closed between species for thousands of years. Then was called forward to present his methods. He was nervous. He had given presentations before, but never to an audience like this. Never to beings from so many different species. Never to medical experts who had been treating their own people successfully for. But when started to speak, the nervousness fell away. He was just a doctor talking about medicine, about patients, about the principles that worked across all biology no matter what form it took. "All life needs energy," he said, his voice carrying through the chamber. "All life needs to remove waste. All life needs to adapt to its environment. All life can be damaged. All life can heal." He paused, letting the words sink in. "These are universal truths. When you understand these truths, you can treat any patient from any species." He showed images of neural degeneration and explained the treatment. He showed scans of the genetic locks and explained how he had freed them. He showed case studies of dozens of patients, each one a story of a being that the experts had thought was beyond help. But the real moment came when a healer stood up and asked a question. "How did you know what to try?" they asked. "We have studied human medicine. It is crude compared to ours. How could you accomplish what our finest experts could not?" Thought about this carefully before answering. "I think," he said slowly, "it is because I was not limited by what I thought I should be able to do. I came to alien medicine as someone learning from the beginning. I had no preconceptions. I had no experts telling me what was possible and impossible. I had only a patient who needed help and a willingness to try. The healer's lights shifted to what might have been a smile. "That is wisdom," the alien said. "A wise healer is not limited by knowledge. A wise healer is guided by knowledge but not imprisoned by it." The presentation took 3 hours. Questions came from every section of the hall. Some questions were technical, some were philosophical, some challenged methods. But each question was respectful. Each question came from a place of genuine interest in understanding how a human veterinarian had accomplished something that seemed impossible. By the end, the entire assembly stood and made the gesture of respect used by their various species. Some glowed, some released harmonic tones, some clicked mandibles together, some simply stood in silence. But the message was clear, had earned their respect. His methods were valid, his experience mattered. That evening, there was a celebration in the station's main dining hall. Food from a dozen different worlds was served. Beings of every type mixed and talked and shared stories. Found himself surrounded by healers who wanted to discuss specific cases, who wanted to learn his techniques, who wanted to bring his methods back to their own worlds. Sarah Williams approached him with a data pad. She was beaming. "We have 7 invitations," she said. 7 different species have asked if we will send human medical experts to their worlds. They want to establish medical divisions like ours. They want human doctors to help train their people in the methods you have created. Felt overwhelmed. What had started as trying to save one alien patient had become something that spanned the galaxy. His work was spreading. His methods were being adopted. His belief that compassion and careful observation could overcome any barrier was being validated on a scale he had never imagined. Found him later, sitting alone on a bench in the observation garden. This presence was comforting now, as familiar as any human friend might be. "You changed everything," said. "You know that, yes." "I just treated patients," said. "I just refused to give up." "Exactly," replied. "That refusal, that is what changes everything." The lights pulsed softly. "My people believed that we were alone, that other species had nothing we needed, that contact with aliens was a weakness." Paused. "You proved us wrong. You proved that across all the differences between our kinds, there is something that connects us, something that makes us care about beings we have never met." "What is that?" asked. "Life," said. "The simple desire to live, to survive, to be healthy, to be whole." He extended his crystalline hand and took it. The stone was warm and solid. "Every being, no matter what we are made of, wants these things. Every being values someone who will fight to protect these things. You fought for me when you did not have to. You trusted me when I did not deserve trust. You became something more than a doctor. You became a bridge between worlds." Looked at the stars beyond the transparent walls. Somewhere out there, ships carrying his medical knowledge were traveling to alien worlds. Somewhere out there, beings who would never have met were learning to work together. Somewhere out there, the simple act of one human refusing to give up on a dying alien was changing how entire civilizations understood each other. "What happens next?" asked. "Now," said, "we teach others, we spread what we have learned. We prove that the galaxy is not meant to be divided into species that do not interact. We prove that cooperation is possible, that trust is possible, that compassion is possible." The lights brightened. "And we do it all because a human veterinarian smiled at an alien healer and said, 'Let me try to help you.'" Smiled now too. He thought about his years on Earth treating animals. He thought about how those animals had taught him patience and compassion and the importance of gentle hands. He thought about how lessons learned from healing creatures on one small world could eventually bridge the gap between beings from dozens of worlds. Sometimes the most important moments in history began with the smallest acts. A refusal to give up, a willingness to trust, a smile that said, "I see you, I understand you, let me help." And from that small moment, everything changed. The stars glowed above station as Satwith and looked out at the galaxy. There was so much work ahead, so many patients to treat, so many new methods to develop, so many bridges still to build between species that had never thought they could work together. But was not worried anymore. He had learned something important through all of this. He had learned that hands could heal across any difference, that minds could connect across any distance. That compassion was a language that every being in the galaxy could understand. And as long as there were beings who needed help, would be there with his human hands and his veterinarian's heart, ready to help them heal. "You did more than that," Laura replied. She poured the wine into the glasses. You showed every alien species around this station that humans have value beyond weapons and military power. You showed them that our strength is in our ability to adapt, to learn, to care. She raised her glass. You showed them that sometimes a human's hands are exactly what is needed. Raised his glass and clinked it against hers. Outside his window, the stars glowed in the darkness. Somewhere out there, beings from dozens of species were talking about the human doctor. They were telling stories. They were spreading word that maybe, just maybe, humans were worth listening to. And it had all started because a veterinarian had refused to give up on a patient. Because one man had believed that compassion could bridge any gap. Because hands that looked crude and dangerous had proven to be instruments of healing. And it had all started because a human veterinarian had believed that compassion mattered more than pride. That experience with animals could teach lessons that applied to all living things. That sometimes the most dangerous thing was refusing to try. Finished his coffee and went to prepare for the first day of the medical division. He had work to do. He had beings to help. He had a future to build. When finally looked up from the equipment, he saw Vexil standing across the platform. The lights were burning bright and steady. They were the colors had learned to recognize as relief and gratitude and something else, something that might have been respect. You did not fail, Vexil said. His voice carried new tones, new meanings. Your hands, which I feared would break him, have saved him. Felt tired and satisfied all at once. My hands are just tools, he said. What matters is knowing how to use them and caring about what you are trying to do. Vexil's lights pulsed softly. Have a saying, knowledge without compassion is blindness. You have both. This is rare. Nodded, then he sat down in the nearest chair. He would watch for the rest of the night. He would make sure the recovery continued. He would rest later. For now, there was a patient who needed to heal and a human doctor who understood that sometimes the most important tool was simply staying present and refusing to give up. Vexil turned to look at him. The lights pulsed slowly like a heartbeat. Let me try, said. Not because I am sure I can help, but because doing nothing means dies, and you know that. You already know that. For the first time since he arrived, Vexil did not say no.